understanding how things happen on ground, because again, you execute everything on ground and you work with the field staff to execute it. So almost every time you had that particular visibility of how things are really happening on ground. What are the real expectations of the people for whom you are building that particular initiative or strategizing that particular initiative or designing the policy. So that particular understanding of Indian user base or citizens, and basically how things really happen on ground. What are the enablers to kind of really drive things on ground, etc.
क्या आप भी टॉप स्टार्टअप्स में फंडिंग करना चाहते हैं या फिर आप फॉर्च्यून 500 कंपनीज के वर्क को इंप्रूव करना चाहते हैं? Stay tuned for today's session. Hello folks, welcome to the series named The Placement Guide, where we help students to know about different career opportunities and hiring processes of their dream companies. Today, we have a very special guest amongst us whose name is Abhishek Singh. Abhishek is currently working as an investment professional in Riverwalk Holdings, a venture capital firm. Earlier, he had worked in LEK Consulting and Samagra and is an IIT Kanpur alumni. He was also awarded IIT Kanpur Excellence in Leadership Convocation Award. Thank you so much, Abhishek, for accepting our invitation and coming up to the show.
No, yeah, great. Thanks a lot, Madhu, for inviting me, for having me here. I think prior to this, I saw that you have interviewed some great folks. I think very overwhelmed to be invited by you, and yeah, looking forward to the discussion here.
So before we proceed, do like and share this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe the channel for more such videos. Let's deep dive into your journey, Abhishek.
Yeah, absolutely. Should I give you a brief about my journey, or you have any specific question with which we can start?
I think we can start with the questions.
Yeah, sure.
So coming from an engineering background, how did you develop your interest towards private equity and venture capital space?
So, I mean, actually, there's a long story to that. So, how would I narrate it is that during my college days, actually, I mean, after a couple of years at IIT Kanpur, I kind of really realized that engineering, or at least the core domain, isn't something that I really want to pursue for the longest time of my life. And hence, kind of really started doing a lot of non-core internships. So I interned at Reserve Bank of India, IIT Consulting, Axis Bank, and a few more. And broadly, along with all of these internship, I kind of was very much involved on the student governance bit at the campus. I took leadership positions across the board. And sometime in my fourth year, I kind of really started enjoying that particular vibe of kind of really representing the community, adding value to their journey, and being able to kind of really take decisions or not take decision, but institutionalize things which could kind of really impact or add value to their journey. And because of that, I kind of really got a bit confused whether public services is that something, or as a sector is something which I find interesting. So, I mean, before kind of really deep diving into it and starting my UPSC prep, I thought of kind of really just giving it a try and do some bit of experimentation. So I joined Samagra because of that particular thought process, because Samagra is a governance consulting firm where basically you work alongside bureaucrats almost on a daily basis. So the idea was to try it out for almost 1 year and understand whether the life of a bureaucrat is something that I really want, and will love to have that for 40 years of my life or not. So net, I think over 1 year journey, I realized that absolutely that is not something which I would like to have for 40 years. But because my engagement was, so basically I was working with government of Haryana, where I was trying to improve the overall employability skill of the students in the government institution. Alongside was institutionalizing various strategies to ensure that almost 80,000 youth get employment opportunities almost on an annual basis. So because if given it's a very market driven segment, so we were working with a lot of startups, the likes of Apna, Vahan, WorkX, Teamlease, etc. And I think during that time, I used to get a lot of time to kind of really interact with the founders of these startups, and just by those conversation, I think the shared uh, value addition or the insights that they used to share, and alongside not just the insight, but the devotion that they have to kind of really create an impact in the society at large, or the value which they want to create. I think that kind of really motivated me. So the moment my interest from public services went out, I started seeing value VC space as more of an enabler, or even before that, startup as more of a value creator. I think I've talked about this a lot on my social media as well, that I see startups as a value creator. So I think even though people say a lot of stuff about startup, but I think life is almost impossible, right? In today's time, without these startups, like Zomato, Swiggy, Urban Company, Uber, Ola, and similarly on the B2B side of things. So I see them as value creators and VCs as a value enabler, because as a VC, you able to kind of really resonate with the idea of those many, almost 50, 100, how big your portfolio is, those many founders and the vision that they are seeing. So basically, they tell you how 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, the world will look like, how would people would purchase then, how would they behave then, what will be the various nuances of their day-to-day behavior. So I think that particular bit of being something who is able to enable such large value addition via hundreds of companies that you get to work with, I think that particular thought process in itself felt very much exciting. And I think I at least believe that this has been one of the very unique point, or decision maker for me, that why VC, and why I kind of really wanted to work with early stage companies at such start of my career. So yeah, probably that.
Yeah, that's really nice journey from engineering to public services to venture capital space. And
Yeah,
really like the analogy that you shared as value creators and value enablers for the startups and the VC industry.
yeah.
So how do you think a student can improve their leadership qualities based on your own past experiences?
Hmm. No, yeah, so I think very interesting stuff. Again, I think leadership as a word is very macro in itself. You need to kind of really divide it into multiple channels. How I see leadership is, I mean, leadership, you are able to portray your leadership whenever you are working in a community or in a group or in an organization. So I divide it or bucket it into three segments: individual leadership, team leadership, and more in terms of the organizational leadership. So, what kind of really individual leadership bucket comprises is more in terms of your personal development, the competencies that you're able to develop, the overall time management that you're able to do, the thought process you're able to develop in terms of being able to stay ahead of the curve, and those kind of aspect. I'll come to that particular piece, that how can you kind of really work on those. But I'm just giving you an overview on what I constitutes in the bucket. In terms of the team leadership, it is more about how you are able to manage or work with in a team like structure. Are you able to kind of really take responsibilities at times when other team members in aren't that kind of really well in terms of their operation, or are down because of any reason? Other than your own work, are you able to kind of really create a bandwidth to help other folks in your team to kind of really grow with you, alongside you, etc.? And organizational is more in terms of your self-interest, in terms of, are you able to kind of really improve the overall positioning, or able to bring your company onto the maps of whatever space or geography you are in. So are you able to kind of really drive those, say, media challenges, some organizational level strategies, some very nuanced thought process in terms of how can we kind of really stay ahead of the curve in terms of the competition, in terms of the market you see moving forward. So probably these are the various channels where I see leadership getting kind of really portrayed. I think in terms of how to develop it, I don't think there is a clear-cut playbook to it. But I think what has really worked for me is three things, I think, over there. One, I think the day you start with your individual leadership, able to kind of really, I think as a leader, what I really believe is that the broader objective every time should be to kind of really ensure that your thought process and whatever you are doing is to get things done. Ensure that you are doing extensive preparation before the meeting. The thought process is always to get things done. I mean, take all the things to potential logical conclusions. Once you start with that particular thought process, that once you have kind of really thought about anything, the idea is to kind of really just execute it in some way or the other, so that you reach a very logical conclusion or the end state. I think a very big chunk of building leadership qualities, or at least individual leadership, kind of really start portraying in, because once you kind of really think about the overall vision, and now you are very sure that you need to kind of really achieve or reach the final conclusion, there are various nuances which you kind of really have to figure out along the way, starting with kind of really charting out the overall strategy for it, co-working with a lot of folks to kind of really keep on moving towards it. So all of these things kind of really help you build, first, more in terms of help you build competencies, more in terms of planning, management, alongside the second thing which I talked about, working with the folks, will help you build the team management aspect of it. Because now, given that you are leading the overall initiative, you are not competing with anyone in your team. The idea is that everyone should grow, and only if they will grow or will be able to take a lot of ownership on their own, your work will get reduced. So it's always beneficial for you to ensure that the folks there are kind of really growing, are able to take ownership, have the required guidance whenever needed. So I think that's the second part. And third, I think is more in terms of just kind of really being on ground at all the moments. Um, so broadly, what I've seen or I've realized that at times what happens is that once you start taking a lot of leadership position, you get away from the ground, and you just kind of really sometimes gets almost 30,000 away from the ground, and you really do not have very strong idea in terms of the various micro details that are going in the team. Of course, as a leader, you probably do not need to know them, but I fundamentally believe that not micromanaging, but having micro level detailing of whatever is going in the project, what was the thought process, how we kind of really went in one particular way or the other, etc., kind of really helps you keep a track of it. And because you have kind of really seen that particular whole process multiple times even before, and that's why you're leading it now, you are able to foresee a lot of challenges which probably others in the team might not, and hence you are able to kind of really inform them about the potential dangers, sell them, and mitigate the risk, etc. So I think broadly those are the three pieces. So if I were to just call out, building, focusing more on just building that particular thought process of just getting things done rather than just thinking about problem statement, solutions, and not acting on it. So that's the first. Once you start doing that, I think individual leadership gets solved for. Second, once you start operationalizing things, just ensuring that you have the least amount of work, and you are able to kind of really improve the efficiency or competency of everyone in your team, so that they are also able to kind of really grow very fast. So that will allow you to have very high level of, or very strong team leadership capabilities. And in terms of organizational leadership, I think once you have taken positions multiple times, just staying on the ground, able to kind of really understand the various nuances or the whatever is going in the ecosystem, and trying to kind of really stay ahead of the curve, taking those initiative, always thinking about what next would be done, kind of really helps you with organizational leadership. I think broadly that's how I see it, and I believe anyone can go about building it. But again, I think for leadership, it's a personal playbook for everyone. At least this is what have worked for me.
Yeah, that's really nice description of leadership, segmenting into three buckets, and the detailed description that you shared.
Great.
So what was your biggest learning from your experience at Samagra as associate consultant?
Yeah, so at Samagra, as I told you earlier, we used to work with state governments, help them strategize and then execute various statewide engagements. So I think a couple of biggest learnings there. First, I think the transferable skill sets that I learned. So Samagra, when I joined, was kind of was at a inflection point of their growth, a trajectory. Was a very lean team earlier then, and hence every person in the team used to have very high ownership. Even if you are a program associate or a program consultant, the amount of ownership used to be high. So for example, if there is an engagement on which you are working on, and that engagement is getting divided into 20 work stream, each associate used to manage 5 to 6 work stream end to end on their own. So the amount of ownership that you had was very high, and hence basically everything that you were doing used to kind of really be used to take a lot of mental stimulation to kind of really first think about, and then co-work with so many different officers to execute them on ground. So I think one of the biggest learning was all of these transferable skill set that I learned because of the high ownership environment and very competitive environment. When I say the transferable skill set, you can consider anything from verbal communication, written communication, presentation skills, data analysis, the way you are able to kind of really do stakeholder management, just are able to kind of really focus more on execution of things rather than just thinking about it, and being more focused or heavy on the execution. So I think that transferable skill set, and second, kind of really understanding how things happen on ground, because again, you execute everything on ground and you work with the field staff to execute it. So almost every time you had that particular visibility of how things are really happening on ground. What are the real expectation of the people whom you, I mean, for whom you are building that particular initiative or strategizing that particular initiative or designing the policy. So that particular understanding of Indian user base or citizens, and basically how things really happen on ground. What are the enablers to kind of really drive things on ground, etc. I think broadly those were the couple of best learning. One is more from the professional side, which I talked about first, and second is more of a personal learning, which I believe even helps me now when I perform due diligence on a lot of startups that we see, because I have that particular understanding that how people on street kind of really thinks about any particular solution, what allows them to purchase one thing over other, etc. I think that has been of great help to me even now when I kind of really evaluate any startups. Yeah, probably that.
Yeah, that's really nice set of learnings that you shared at both professional as well as personal level. So
Great.
can you share about the shortlisting process done by LEK Consulting for their private equity team?
Sure. So when so I joined I mean typically LEK hire from campuses from all the IITs, a few IIMs and ISB. I applied for it laterally, and I think over there the process was very simple. First, it was more of a resume shortlisting where I think they received almost 1,000 plus applications, shortlisted a few. 20 25 folks to kind of really interview. Then once that was done, basically you have three rounds of discussion, 3 to 4 rounds of discussion. The first is more of an HR round where the idea is to kind of really learn more about the cultural fit, what are your expectation, why you want to join kind of an LEK and those kind of stuff. That is there just to understand if there is any expectation mismatch or you are very much aligned to work at LEK. Once that piece is done, then there are 2 to 3 round of conversations, starting with consultant, then with manager, and then with partner, which are more of a case rounds where they give you any cases on which they have already worked, or any kind of guest estimate or market sizing, etc. Just to kind of really understand more about your quantitative skill, your structuring, the way you communicate, how structured is that, how strong you are in terms of your mathematical skills, structuring, etc. So probably those were the three discussion, and after that, I think typically they are good to give you an offer letter if they have enjoyed all the 4 conversations with you.
Yeah, that's really nicely explained the shortlisting process conducted by LEK Consulting.
Great.
So how does due diligence conducted in private equity roles?
Hmm. So again, I think there are three type of due diligences, right? One is commercial due diligence, the second is financial, and third is legal due diligence. So basically, companies like LEK does the commercial due diligence bit, right? Financial due diligence is something which companies like say KPMG, BDO, Deloitte, Big Four, other who constitutes the big four, kind of really perform, and legal due diligence is of course done by advocates and all. Now, in terms of the commercial due diligence, I think broader thought process there is to build very high level of conviction. That why the particular essay that we are looking at has the highest right to win. Now, if I want to kind of really learn whether one particular asset has the highest right to win, you start in a very structured and uh, very this way. You start with the market, you try to kind of really first gauge in how big is the market overall, then you try to kind of really segment it out across the various categories. For example, and if you are performing a due diligence on any school, so there are various fee ranges. There will be some very super premium school, there will be some premium schools, some budget schools, and then some I mean below budget schools. So basically, you'll segment across all the four, try to kind of really understand the overall market landscaping, that how competitive each space is in terms of the pricing, offering, what really differentiate one offering with respect to another, etc. And also try to build some better perspective in terms of how has the growth of that particular sector being or subcategory being historically. So basically, you start with the market, you try to build comfort on one subcategory, that which subcategory is the best and highest right to win. Once that is done, and you come to the asset. Over there also there are a couple of things that you try to look at. One is more on the qualitative side, other is more onto the quantitative side. So qualitatively, you try to kind of really understand more in terms of the customer love, how what is the people's perception or the user base perception about that particular asset, what is competitors' perception about that asset, what is the perception of other investors um, who have invested in that particular geography about that particular asset, etc. And similarly, in terms of the quantitative, you try to understand more in terms of how they've grown, what has been the retention of their customer base, how strongly their customer base kind of relate to that particular product or offering, etc. So more onto the quantitative side, anything around, say, their growth, their profit margins, their balance sheet, their P&L, their cash flow statement, and everything around that. Basically, you try to understand that what has really happened in the business over the last 2 to 3 years of their operation. What are the things that went well? What are the things that didn't went that well? And how we are, or how the current management has taken steps to kind of really improve on the things that haven't went well. So you try to build conviction on that. Once that piece is done, then you kind of really go for the valuation side of things, where again, I think it is the idea is to kind of really understand and build conviction that what valuation would be the best, on how to best price that particular asset so that you make the majority of the returns, say over a 5 to 10 years timeline period. So yeah, I think broadly these are the few things that private equity teams at consulting firm does.
Yeah, that's a really very descriptive answer. It would be really helpful to a lot of the people who wanted to understand more about the private equity space.
Great.
So how does turnaround strategy executed by private equity companies?
So for that, broadly, what we'll have to understand is that there are two type of private equities. One are those private equities which um, kind of really take the majority of the stake in the company, and that's their playbook. For example, Blackstone, for them, I think the playbook is to kind of really own majority of the stakes in the company. And similarly, then there are private equities like Warburg Pincus. For them, the idea is not to own the majority, but a significant amount of equity in the company. Now, the way both of these private equity operations kind of really differs. Now, what really happens is that once any of the consulting firm have kind of really performed due diligence, alongside, typically the project gets extended if they have already, I mean, if they decide to invest in that particular asset, to help them build some turnaround strategy roadmap as well. And once the consulting firm have given some recommendation, a few of the consulting firms by themselves help them kind of really execute, a few does not. But the net idea is, for category A kind of private equities which hold majority of the stake, because now they are the management, they are owning it. So what typically the playbook there or the SOP is that they have almost on a daily basis regular chance with the um, leadership team, and kind of really these guys also, the private equity guys, kind of really build strategy roadmaps, thought process, how to execute things, typically go on the ground very frequently to understand how things are moving and how the various initiatives are playing out on ground, what are the various feedback, kind of really institutionalized feedback loop to get real-time feedback, and so that they can re-strategize and execute whatever the things that aren't going that well. Whereas for the other category of private equities where they don't hold majority of the stakes, typically the SOP has been to kind of really partner with any of the consulting funds firms, and then kind of really co-work with the consulting firm. That consulting firm, alongside private equity and the leadership team, kind of really help and execute various initiatives just to ensure that your revenue starts improving, cost gets reduced, and you start making a bit of more money. So I think broadly those are the two ways in which it happens. But again, even though I've categorized them as category one or two, but ideally, if you look on the ground, I think in terms of their SOP, the playbook, there is hardly any difference. I think even Warburg Pincus or any of those kind of private equities also does similar amount of work, have almost daily discussion with folks in the leadership team, goes to the field almost at a on similar interval basis, and understand how things are moving, and then kind of really help them with strategies and all also. So yeah, probably that.
Yeah, that's a really nice way how private equity companies and consulting ones works together on the turnaround strategies usually.
Yeah.